Thomas Whitlock had been alone on Aurelia for 19 days when he heard the scream. He was 45 years old, a widower, a crystal miner working a contract he didn't really need anymore on a planet most men avoided. The sky above him was the color of old bruises, and the rain had not stopped in 3 days. He almost didn't go. The scream came again, sharp, human-sounding, full of pain, and Thomas thought about his wife, Margaret, 8 years gone now. He thought about the night she died in the hospital and how he'd arrived 20 minutes too late. He'd promised himself, standing beside her bed, that he would never be 20 minutes too late again. So he set down his crystal pack, he picked up his rifle, and he walked into the alien forest, not knowing that the woman bleeding in that clearing was a queen, not knowing that saving her life would cost him everything he thought he had left, not knowing that an ancient law, older than human civilization, was about to bind him to her in ways he could not refuse. What Thomas Whitlock didn't understand yet, what he would only understand much later with his daughter's voice in his ear and a silver-skinned woman holding his hand, was this: sometimes the life you think is over is only the first chapter, and sometimes the universe gives an ordinary man a second chance to love. He just has to be brave enough to take it. The morning of the 19th day began like all the others. The rain on his metal shelter sounded like someone tapping fingers, slow, patient, the kind of rain that didn't care if you were listening. He poured the last of his instant coffee into a chipped mug, bitter, burnt, the way Margaret used to make it actually. She'd laugh about it. She'd say, "Tom, this coffee tastes like regret." And he'd kiss the top of her head and drink it anyway. 8 years since Margaret. He set the mug down on the small folding table, picked up the wooden box beside it. The box was the only thing he'd brought from Earth that wasn't tools or supplies. Inside were 3 photographs. The first was their wedding. Margaret in a simple white dress because they couldn't afford anything fancy. Thomas in a borrowed jacket because his only suit had a hole in the elbow. They were 17, both of them, pregnant with Hannah and terrified. The second photograph was Margaret in the hospital bed, thin, bald from the chemo, smiling anyway, because she was that kind of woman. The third photograph was new. His brother had sent it last month. A young woman holding a tiny baby wrapped in a yellow blanket. Hannah, 28 years old now, and his granddaughter Lily, 2 weeks old at the time of the photo. Thomas hadn't met Lily yet. He hadn't spoken to Hannah in 8 years, not since the funeral. He closed the box. The rain kept tapping. His radio crackled to life, and a voice from the company office on the orbital station said something about weather warnings. Thomas didn't really listen. He'd been listening to weather warnings for 6 years now, ever since he'd taken this job, ever since the medical bills had buried him so deep that he'd accepted any contract that paid double. Aurelia paid triple. He drank his coffee. He thought about Lily's small face, and then, through the rain, through the wind, through the heavy alien silence that hung over this planet, he heard a scream. Thomas froze with the mug halfway to his mouth. Not an animal. Animals don't scream like that. He'd been on enough mining planets to know the difference. Animals roar. Animals shriek. Animals warn. People scream. The sound came again, sharper this time, closer, and full of something Thomas recognized immediately, because he'd heard it once before, a long time ago, in a hospital room. It was the sound of someone who knew they were going to die. Thomas set the mug down very slowly. His hands were shaking, because here was the thing about Thomas Whitlock. He had spent the last 8 years believing that the worst moment of his life was already behind him, that nothing could ever be as bad as walking into Margaret's hospital room 20 minutes too late and seeing her empty eyes staring at the ceiling. He had promised her body lying there in that bed that he would never be 20 minutes too late again, not for anyone. The scream came a third time, weaker. Thomas grabbed his rifle off the wall. He stepped into the rain. The Aurelian forest was nothing like the forests of Earth. The trees here were tall and pale with bark that glowed faintly in the dark, like coals dying in a fireplace. Insects the size of his thumb drifted through the air on slow wings. The ground was soft, spongy. Each step made a wet, sucking sound. Thomas moved fast for a man of 45. 6 years of mining work had kept him strong. Stronger than he'd been at 30, honestly. His shoulders were thick. His hands were rough. His knees ached when it rained, but his knees had been aching for years. He pushed through a thicket of glowing vines. He stopped. Voices ahead, low, growling, speaking a language he'd never heard before, but he understood the tone. He'd heard that tone in bar fights and in courtrooms and in the voices of debt collectors. The tone of men preparing to kill. Thomas dropped to a crouch behind a fallen log. What he saw, he did not at first believe. 3 figures, tall, armored in dark plates that absorbed the rain. Their helmets had glowing red lenses where eyes should be. Each carried a long spear that pulsed with red energy at the tip. They were not human. In the center of the small clearing, lying on the wet ground, was a woman. Or what looked like a woman. Her skin was silver, pale silver like moonlight on water. Her hair was long and dark, and even in the rain, Thomas could see that it had a faint violet shimmer to it. She wore armor too, but her armor was different, smoother, decorated with glowing patterns that pulsed weakly like a heartbeat that was running out. She was bleeding from her side. She was trying to stand. She couldn't. One of the armored figures stepped forward and raised his spear. He pointed the tip at her chest. He said something in his growling language, something that sounded like a sentence being passed. The woman on the ground looked up at him. She did not beg. Thomas would remember that later, much later. He would remember that she did not beg. She just lifted her chin like a queen on a scaffold. And in that moment, something inside Thomas Whitlock made a decision that the rest of his mind had not caught up to yet. He raised his rifle. He aimed. He fired. The plasma bolt hit the lead hunter in the shoulder. The figure roared and stumbled backward. The other two whirled spears raised, scanning the trees. Thomas stood up from behind the log. His heart was pounding so hard he could feel it in his teeth. "Hey," he said. His voice came out rougher than he expected. "Hey, you ugly bastards." The hunters saw him. They charged. Thomas had been in exactly one bar fight in his entire life. He was not a soldier. He was not a hero. He was a tired widower with a mining rifle and a stupid amount of guilt that had been waiting 8 years for somewhere to go. But Thomas knew rocks. Thomas knew terrain. Thomas knew that the soft Aurelian ground would slow heavy creatures more than it slowed him. He ran sideways. He fired again. The first hunter went down hard, its leg buckling in the mud. The second one swung its spear. Thomas ducked. The energy tip cut through the air an inch above his head, leaving a smell like burnt copper. He kicked the hunter's knee. It dropped. He shot it. The third one made a sound, a loud, ugly sound. And then it ran, just turned and crashed through the trees and disappeared into the forest. Silence. Just the rain. Thomas stood in the middle of the clearing with his rifle still raised, his arms shaking, his breath coming in ragged gasps. There were 2 bodies at his feet. He had killed them. Killed them. He had never killed anything bigger than a deer. He felt sick. Then he remembered the woman. He turned, lowered the rifle, walked toward her on legs that did not feel like his own. She was watching him. Her eyes were violet, not violet like a flower, violet like a star. Her face was pale, even paler than it should have been, and there was blood on her lips. Thomas knelt down beside her. "Hey," he said, softly, the way he used to talk to Margaret in the hospital. "Hey, you're okay? You're okay." She tried to speak. Her voice came out as a whisper. "Human." "Yeah," Thomas said. "Yeah, that's me." "You should not have done that." He almost laughed. Almost. Because of all the things he had expected her to say, that was not on the list. "I get that a lot," he said. He pulled out the medical kit from his belt. His hands had stopped shaking somewhere along the way. He didn't know when. He pressed a bandage against the wound on her side, and she winced, and he said, "I'm sorry. I'm sorry, I know it hurts." "Human," Her voice was getting weaker. "What is your name?" "Thomas," he said. "Thomas Whitlock." "Thomas." She said it slowly, like she was tasting it. Then her hand reached up, and before he understood what was happening, she had grabbed his wrist with surprising strength. Her fingers were cold. Her grip was iron. "Thomas Whitlock," she whispered, "you have just changed your life." Her eyes closed. She went limp in his arms. Thomas stared at her for a long moment. The rain ran down his face. He looked at the two dead hunters. He looked at the dark forest. He looked at the impossible silver-skinned woman bleeding into his lap. "Oh," he said quietly. "Oh, hell." He picked her up. She was lighter than he expected. He carried her back to his shelter. The medical scanner did not know what to do with her. It buzzed. It beeped. It threw up symbols and warnings Thomas could not read. Her biology was not in any database the scanner had access to. Her blood was the wrong color. Her temperature was the wrong number. Her heartbeat was somewhere it shouldn't be. Thomas did the only thing he knew how to do. He cleaned the wound. He stitched it the way a battlefield medic on Earth might have stitched a soldier 200 years ago, with shaking hands and clean thread and hope. He put her on his cot. He covered her with his blanket. The blanket Margaret had made for him the year before she got sick, and he sat in his folding chair beside the cot with his rifle across his knees, and he watched her breathe. Hours passed. The rain stopped. The pale Aurelian dawn began to leak through the small window of the shelter, turning everything inside the room a soft, colorless gray. The woman did not wake up. Thomas did not sleep. He thought about Margaret. He thought about Hannah. He thought about Lily, 2 weeks old in a yellow blanket somewhere on Earth. He thought about the dead hunters in the forest, the ones whose families would never know what had happened to them. He thought mostly about the look on this woman's face when she had lifted her chin to the spear, like a queen on a scaffold. It was nearly noon when she opened her eyes. Thomas had dozed off despite himself, his head tilted back against the wall. He woke up because he felt someone watching him. He blinked. The violet eyes were open. She was looking at him very calmly, as if she had been awake for some time and had simply been observing him while he slept. Thomas straightened up, cleared his throat. "Hi?" he said, brilliantly. "Hello," she said. Her voice was steadier now, quiet. But there was a quality to it that made Thomas sit up a little straighter without quite knowing why. It was the voice of someone who was used to being listened to. "How do you feel?" he asked. "Alive." "Yeah, well, that was the goal." She studied him. Her eyes moved over his face slowly, the way a person reads a book they have not seen before. Thomas suddenly became very aware that he had not shaved in 3 days. "You stitched me," she said. "I did, with needle and thread. It was all I had. You are not a doctor." "No, ma'am." She tilted her head slightly. "You are a soldier." "No, ma'am. I'm a miner." A pause. "A miner. Crystal extraction. 12-hour shifts. Bad coffee." She did not laugh exactly, but something in her face softened. "And yet you fought 3 of the Carthian hunters and survived. I got lucky. They underestimated me. They have never met a human before." Thomas looked down at his hands. Rough, scarred. The wedding ring on the left hand dull from years of stone dust. "I've never met whatever you are either," he said. "I figure that makes us even." She watched him for another long moment. Then she said, "My name is Seraphine Avenwin." "Pleased to meet you, Miss Avenwin." "Queen Avenwin." Thomas blinked. "I'm sorry." "What?" "Queen," she said again slowly, the way you might explain something to a child. "Of the Vishari Empire." Thomas stared at her. He stared at her for what was probably an embarrassingly long time. Then he stood up, walked to the small counter on the other side of the shelter, poured himself a glass of water, drank it, stared at the wall for a moment, set the glass down, came back, sat down, looked at her again. She was still there, still silver-skinned, still violet-eyed, still a queen. "Okay," Thomas said. "Okay, so, you're a queen?" "Yes." "Of an empire?" "Yes." "That I have never heard of." "Your species is young. It does not surprise me." Thomas rubbed his face with both hands. "Right," he said. "Right. Okay." He took a deep breath. "And those guys with the spears in the forest, were they trying to kill you?" "Yes." "Why?" A shadow passed across her face. "That is a long story." Thomas Whitlock. "Lady, I have been alone on this planet for 19 days. I have time." She almost smiled. Almost. The corners of her mouth lifted just for a second, and then she looked away. Toward the small window, toward the gray light coming through. "My most trusted general," she said quietly, "betrayed me. He arranged for my ship to be ambushed. The hunters you killed were sent to finish what he started." "Your general?" "Yes." "Tried to kill you?" "Yes." "That's a hell of a Tuesday." This time she did smile, a small tired smile, but a real one. "Yes," she said. "It is." Thomas leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "Why?" he asked. "Why would he do that?" She did not answer right away. When she did, her voice was different, lower, heavier, like she was lifting something she had been carrying for a long time. I refuse to allow him to start a war. What war? Against a young species in a nearby system, a species he believes is weak, a species he believes should be conquered before they grow strong enough to resist. Thomas felt a slow, cold dread spreading through his chest. What species? He asked. Even though he already knew, she looked at him, those violet eyes. Yours, she said. The silence that followed was very long. Outside, somewhere far away, a bird with the wrong number of wings made a sound that was not quite a song. Thomas sat back in his chair. He thought about Earth, about the small farm in Pennsylvania where he'd grown up, about Margaret's grave under the apple tree, about Hannah and Lily, and his brother, and his sister-in-law, and his neighbors, and the woman at the post office who always called him Honey. He thought about all of them. How big is your empire? He asked. Hundreds of star systems. How big is Earth's military? Thomas. How big? Compared to ours, it is nothing. He nodded slowly. Right, he said. Right. So your general wants to wipe us out. He wants to make Earth a colony. He wants to make humans servants of the Vishari Empire. And you said no. I said no. And he tried to kill you for it. Yes. Thomas stood up. He walked to the window. He looked out at the pale forest, the trees with their glowing bark, the mist rising off the wet ground. He thought about the photograph in the wooden box. Hannah holding Lily, the yellow blanket, the small pink sleeping face. Okay, he said. Okay. Okay. He turned around. I guess I'm helping you, Your Majesty. Seraphine Avenwin looked at him for a long moment. Then she said very quietly, Thomas Whitlock, there is something you should know. Yeah, in the ancient laws of my people, there is a tradition, a sacred bond. When a person saves the life of the queen during battle, that person becomes bound to her by what we call the shalvora, the life debt. Okay? It is not a metaphor. Okay. It is biological. It is recognized by my body, by my royal blood, by every law and custom of my civilization. Okay. Thomas, you are not listening. I am listening. I just don't know what you're trying to tell me. She closed her eyes. When she opened them, there was something in them he could not read. By the law of the Shalvora, she said, the one who saves the queen's life becomes the queen's husband. Thomas stood very still. I'm sorry, he said. Could you say that one more time? You will be my husband, human. A long silence. Thomas rubbed the back of his neck. He looked at the floor. He looked at the ceiling. He looked at the queen on his cot. "Lady," he said, "lady, I appreciate that. I really do. But I'm 45 years old. I'm a widower. I've got a daughter back home who hasn't spoken to me in 8 years and a granddaughter I've never met. I'm a crystal miner. I drink instant coffee. My back hurts when it rains. Thomas, I am not husband material for a queen of an empire. Thomas, with respect. Thomas." He stopped. She was looking at him with something that was not quite amusement, but was not quite not amusement either. "Thomas," she said, "I am not asking you to marry me today." "Oh." "I am simply telling you what the law of my people says, so that you understand what has happened, so that you understand what is at stake." "Right. You saved my life. You did not know what you were doing, but the law does not care what you knew. The law only cares what you did." Thomas sat down on the chair again, slowly. "Right," he said. "I am sorry, Thomas Whitlock." "For what?" "For dragging you into something you did not choose." He looked at her. She was sitting up a little now against the pillow he had folded for her. She looked tired. She looked hurt. She looked like a woman who had been carrying an empire on her back for a long, long time. She looked. He realized with a small jolt of something he could not name beautiful. Not in a pretty way. Not in the way he had thought Margaret was beautiful at 17, in her wedding dress, holding his hand and crying. This was a different kind of beautiful, the kind of beautiful that came from being broken in 100 places and refusing to stop standing. "How old are you?" he asked. It came out before he could stop it. She looked surprised. "That is a strange question." "I know. I'm sorry. You look. I don't know what you look. In your years," she said carefully, "I am 45. Thomas laughed. He didn't mean to. It just came out. "What?" she asked. "Nothing." "Tell me." "It's just, I'm 45 too." "Oh." "Yeah." They looked at each other. It was a strange moment. Quiet. Not romantic, just two people in a small metal shelter on a cold planet recognizing something in each other across a very large distance. 12 years ago, Seraphine said suddenly, my husband died. Thomas went still. I'm sorry, he said. His name was Thalion. He was a king. He was a kind man. He taught me how to rule. How did he die? An accident, a simple accident. He fell from a horse. He was not even on a battlefield. He was on a hunting trip. A horse threw him. He hit his head. He never woke up. She paused. It was very stupid, the way he died. It was the stupidest thing that has ever happened to me. Thomas looked down at his hands. My wife died of cancer, he said. 8 years ago. She was 37. We had been married 20 years. I worked away from home a lot in the last 3 years because of the medical bills. I was not there enough. I was not there at the end. Thomas. My daughter has not spoken to me since the funeral. She blames me for not being there. And were you not there? He thought about it. I was there as much as I could be. Then she does not blame you, Thomas. She blames the world. She has just confused you with the world. He looked up at her. The violet eyes were soft. He didn't know what to say, so he didn't say anything. He just sat there. And she sat there. And somewhere outside the rain started up again, soft and patient, like fingers tapping on the metal roof. After a while she said, "Thank you for saving my life, Thomas Whitlock." He nodded. "Any time, Your Majesty." Seraphine. Any time, Seraphine. That night he could not sleep. He sat at the small folding table with the wooden box in front of him. He opened it. He looked at the 3 photographs: the wedding, the hospital bed, the yellow blanket. He picked up his communicator. The message had been waiting in his inbox for 2 days, but he had not been able to bring himself to listen to it. He'd seen the sender's name, and his hands had gone cold, and he'd put the device away. The sender was his brother. He pressed play. His brother's voice, tired and warm. "Hey, Tommy. Hannah had the baby. A little girl. They named her Lily. Lily Margaret," Hannah said. "Hannah said to tell you the baby's healthy. Hannah said to tell you, Tom. She said to tell you the baby's name. She wanted you to know. I think that means something. I don't know what it means, but I think it means something. Call me back when you can." Thomas set the communicator down. Lily Margaret. She had named the baby after her mother, Thomas Whitlock. 45-year-old widower. Crystal miner, sitting in a metal shelter on an alien planet with an alien queen sleeping 10 feet away, put his face in his hands and cried. He had not cried in 8 years. It came out of him in long, ugly shudders. The kind of crying that is not pretty. The kind of crying that is just the body finally letting go of something it has been holding too long. He cried for Margaret. He cried for Hannah. He cried for the baby he had not yet met. He cried for the 8 years he had spent not crying. And when he was finally done, when his face was wet and his shoulders were shaking, and his breath was coming back to him in ragged gulps, he heard a soft sound from across the room. He looked up. Seraphine was awake. She was watching him. She did not say anything. She just reached out her hand across the small space between them and held it open in the air, an offering, a choice. Thomas hesitated. Then he took her hand. Her fingers were cool, steady, strong. She did not let go. He did not let go. They sat like that in the dim light of the shelter, with the rain on the roof for a long time. Outside in the dark forest of Aurelia, far above the clouds in the cold black silence of orbit, a warship was descending. It was very large. It was very dark. And it was carrying General Magnus Thorvane, 58 years old, advisor to the Queen for 12 years, friend of the late king betrayer of the throne. He was standing at the front window of his bridge. He was looking down at the small green planet beneath him. He was not smiling. He was thinking about a silver-skinned woman. He had been thinking about her for 12 years. And tonight, finally, he was going to have her. Or no one would. Inside the small metal shelter on the surface of Aurelia, Thomas Whitlock held the Queen's hand. He did not know about the warship. He did not know about Magnus Thorvane. He did not know that everything he had just survived was only the beginning. He only knew that he had not held a woman's hand in 8 years, and that this one was not letting go. Outside, somewhere in the dark, the alarm on his shelter's perimeter sensor began very softly to beep. The beeping was soft. That was the worst part. Thomas had been expecting alarms his whole life to sound like emergencies. Loud, shrieking. The way fire alarms screamed in the hospital the night Margaret died. But this was just a small electronic chirp. Polite, almost apologetic, as if his shelter was sorry to interrupt him. He let go of Seraphine's hand. "What is that?" she asked. "Perimeter sensor." Meaning, something is moving outside. Something big enough to trigger it. She sat up straighter, winced, pressed her hand against the bandage on her side. How many somethings? Thomas walked to the small panel by the door, looked at the screen, felt his stomach drop. 6, he said. At least. How close? Close enough. He turned back to her. She was already trying to stand. Hey, no. Sit down. Thomas. You just got stitched up by a man with a sewing kit. Sit down. They will kill us if we stay here. They will kill us faster if you bleed out before we get 100 yards. She looked at him. He looked at her. It was a small standoff. The kind of standoff that lasts maybe 2 seconds, but contains an entire negotiation about who was in charge, about whose body it was, about what kind of help was supposed to be. She sat back down, slowly. "Thank you," he said. "Tell me your plan." "I don't have a plan." "Thomas, I have a panic. I have a panic and a rifle, and I'm working on the plan." He moved fast. Faster than he thought a 45-year-old miner with a bad back could move. He stuffed a survival pack with everything he could grab. Energy cells, a medical kit, 3 protein bars, a flask of water, the communicator, the wooden box with the photographs, because he was not going to leave them. He was not. He grabbed his coat off the hook. He grabbed Margaret's blanket off the cot because Seraphine still needed it. He looked around the small metal room that had been his home for 19 days and felt a strange sharp pang of something he did not have time to feel. "Can you walk?" he asked. "Yes." "Don't lie to me." "I am not lying." "You're lying." "I can walk if you do not wish to carry me." "That's a different sentence than yes." "Thomas." "Okay, okay, let's go." He helped her to her feet. She was steady, stubborn, the kind of woman who would walk on a broken ankle if that was what walking required. He did not have to be told to know this. He could see it in the way she set her jaw. He opened the back door of the shelter. Cold air rushed in. The Aurelian night smelled like wet metal and something sweet underneath. Something like rotting fruit, but not unpleasant. The forest beyond the shelter was a wall of pale glowing trunks. The mist had come back. It moved slowly between the trees like something alive. Behind them, very faintly, he heard voices, growling, coming closer. "Now," Seraphine whispered. They went. They moved through the forest for an hour without speaking. Thomas led. Seraphine followed. He chose paths through the thickest cover, the wettest ground, the places where their tracks would dissolve into mud. He had spent 6 years on mining planets. He knew how to disappear. What he did not know was how to disappear with a queen. Every time he looked back, she was still there, pale in the dim light, her hand pressed against her side, her breathing controlled but shallow. She did not complain. She did not ask to stop. She also did not slow down. After a while, Thomas realized something that made him almost stumble. She was matching his pace, not following, matching. As if she had walked through forests at night before with men who needed her to keep up. He did not ask. It was not the time. They came to a small ravine. A stream cut through it fast and dark, the water moving over stones that glowed the same pale green as the trees. The far bank was steep, climbable but not easily. Thomas looked at Seraphine. She looked at the water. "I can swim," she said. "You can't swim." "I can swim." "You are bleeding from a hole in your side." "Your Majesty, and the water is freezing, and if you go in there, you will pass out before you reach the other bank." She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Then you will have to carry me." "I will have to." "Yes." "Right." He turned around, crouched, said very dryly, "Hop on." She hesitated. It was the first time he had seen her hesitate. "I have not," she said carefully, "been carried by another person in approximately 30 years. Yeah, well, today's full of surprises." She climbed onto his back. She was lighter than he expected. She was warmer than he expected. He hooked his arms under her knees and stood up and stepped into the cold black water, and the shock of it stole his breath. It was up to his thighs in 3 steps, up to his waist in 5. The current pulled at him mean and steady. He set his teeth and walked. Halfway across, she said something into the back of his neck. "What?" he asked. "I said, the last person to carry me was my husband." Thomas kept walking. He did not know what to say to that, so he said the first thing that came into his head, which was, "He must have been a strong guy." A small sound near his ear, almost a laugh. "He was. Better looking than me, significantly. Well, now I feel bad about myself." "Thomas." "What?" "Thank you." The water rose to his chest. He kept walking. "Anytime, Your Majesty." "Seraphine." "Anytime, Seraphine." They climbed out on the far bank, both shivering. He set her down gently. She held onto his shoulder for a moment longer than she needed to, just to steady herself, and her hand was very cold, and his shoulder was very wet, and neither of them said anything about it. They walked another mile before he let them stop. The cave was a piece of luck. He had not been looking for it. He had been looking for a thicket, a hollow, anything to break the wind. He had been about to give up when he saw the dark mouth of it in the side of a low cliff. He went in first, rifle raised. Light on his belt switched to its lowest setting. Empty. Dry. The floor was sand. The ceiling was low, but not too low. There were old marks on the walls, faint scratches that might have been writing once, or might have been claw marks, or might have been nothing. He came back out and waved her in. Inside, he started a small fire. He used a broken energy cell and a piece of dried wood from his pack. He had learned the trick from an old miner on Tantos 3, a man who had been in prisons and in wars, and in places he did not talk about. The flame caught quickly, yellow at the bottom, blue at the top. It threw shadows on the walls of the cave that moved like slow dancers. Seraphine sat by the fire. She held her hands toward it. Her silver skin caught the orange glow and turned it into something else, something gold, something that did not look quite real. She watched the flame for a long time. Thomas watched her watching the flame. He did not realize he was doing it until she said, without looking at him, "You are staring." "Sorry." "Why?" "You just look different in the firelight." "Different how?" He thought about it. "Younger," he said. She turned her face toward him. She did not smile, but something in her eyes moved. "That is a kind lie." "It's not a lie. I am 45 years old, Thomas Whitlock. I have not been young in a very long time. Neither have I. A pause. She said, "Tell me about her." "Who?" "Your wife." He almost flinched. "In 8 years." In 8 years, no one had asked him to talk about Margaret. People had given him casseroles and condolences and pamphlets about grief support groups. People had told him their own stories about their own dead. People had patted his shoulder and looked at him with sad eyes. No one had asked him to talk about her. He looked at the fire. Her name was Margaret, he said. Margaret Ann Whitlock. Maiden name Coleman. She had red hair, real red, not auburn, not strawberry, the kind of red that people stop you in the street to comment on. She had freckles on her nose. She had a laugh that. She had this laugh. It was loud. It was embarrassing in restaurants. She didn't care. She used to laugh at her own jokes before she finished telling them. He stopped. He took a breath. We got married when we were 17. She was pregnant. Our parents were furious. We didn't have any money. We lived in her aunt's basement for the first year. I worked construction. She worked in a diner. We had Hannah, and Hannah was a hard baby. She didn't sleep. Neither of us slept for 2 years. You were children raising a child. Yeah. What was she like? Margaret. She was funny. She was stubborn. She was a terrible cook. She burned everything. She could burn water. She used to say that the smoke detector was her sous chef. A small laugh from Seraphine. Quiet. Real. He kept going. She was kind. I don't mean polite. I mean kind. She was the kind of person who... There was this old guy in our neighborhood. He was a mean old man. Everybody hated him, and Margaret used to bring him soup every week. She'd say, "Somebody loved that man once. Somebody held him when he was a baby." She brought him soup until he died. He left her a Bible in his will. That's all he had to leave. What did she do with it? She kept it. She kept it on the shelf above the kitchen sink, so she could see it when she did the dishes. You loved her very much. Yes. She loved you very much. Yes. And then she died. And then she died. The fire crackled. He watched a piece of wood collapse into ember. It was cancer, he said. It was in her bones by the time we found it. We did chemo. We did radiation. We did everything. For 3 years we did everything. I worked off-world. The bills were unbelievable. Insurance covered some of it. We mortgaged the house. We sold her mother's jewelry. We did everything. Thomas, I missed it. I missed the end. I was on a freighter coming back from Tantos 3. There was a delay. There was always a delay. I came in 20 minutes too late. Thomas, my daughter was there. My daughter held her hand. My daughter watched her mother go, and I was. I was on a freighter. I was 20 minutes too late. He didn't realize he was crying again until Seraphine reached out and brushed her thumb under his eye. It was such a small gesture, it almost broke him. "Thomas Whitlock," she said softly, "listen to me." He looked at her. "You did not fail her. I wasn't there. You were there for 3 years. You were there for 20 years. You were there in every shift you worked, in every dollar you sent home, in every minute you missed because you were paying for her medicine. You were there, Thomas. You were there in every way a man can be there." He shook his head. "My daughter doesn't think so. Your daughter is grieving. It's been 8 years. Grief does not have a clock." He looked down. He looked at his hands, the wedding ring, the calluses, the dirt under the fingernails that never quite came out. "Seraphine," he said. "Yes." "Are you afraid of what?" "Of loving someone again, after Thalion." She did not answer for a long time. When she did, her voice was very quiet. "Yes." "Why?" "Because I am not the woman he married. Because she died with him. Because I have been someone else for 12 years now, and I do not know if anyone could love the person I have become." "Who have you become?" She looked at the fire. "A queen. Only a queen. That's not nothing. It is also not enough." He thought about this. He thought about this for a long time. Then he said, "Margaret used to say that grief is the price you pay for love." She said, "If you don't want the bill, don't buy the thing. But the thing is worth it. The thing is always worth it. Your wife was a wise woman. She really was, Thomas." "Yes. I am glad I am hiding in a cave with you." He laughed. He didn't mean to. It surprised him as much as it seemed to surprise her. The sound of it bounced off the walls of the cave and came back at them, and Seraphine smiled, and Thomas put his face in his hands and laughed harder. And after a moment, she was laughing too quietly, but laughing both of them, two middle-aged people in a cave on an alien planet. When he finally stopped, his cheeks hurt. He had forgotten what that felt like. The voice came on the wind 2 hours later. They had eaten. They had bandaged her wound again. They had been about to try to sleep, and then the speakers in the trees turned on. Thomas did not understand at first. The sound was everywhere, soft, coming from the forest itself, as if the leaves had learned to speak. He grabbed his rifle and pulled Seraphine behind him before he realized what was happening. She held up her hand. "Wait," she said. The voice was speaking in a language he did not know, but he watched her face. He watched the color go out of it. He watched her become very, very still. "Seraphine." Wait. Who is that? Wait. The voice spoke for a long time, soft, almost tender, like a man speaking to a frightened child. When it stopped, Seraphine was shaking. He had not seen her shake before. "Hey," he said. "Hey, hey, look at me. It is him. Magnus." "Yes." What did he say? She closed her eyes. He said many things, Thomas. Tell me. He said he has loved me for 12 years. Thomas blinked. What? He said he loved me from the moment I was crowned. He said he watched me become a widow. He said he stood beside me at every council. He said he waited. He said he was patient. He said he believed that if he was patient long enough, I would one day understand. Understand what? That we belong together. Thomas did not say anything. He could not for a moment. He said, Seraphine continued, her voice flat now, almost dead, that he did not want to kill me. He said that the ambush was a regret. He said it was a moment of weakness. He said that what he wants is to marry me, to rule with me, to protect me from the council, from the politics, from the long loneliness he has watched me carry. He said all of that. Yes. And he tried to kill you. Twice now. Yes. He's insane. He believes he is in love. That's not love. No. You knew this man for 12 years. Yes. And you didn't know. She opened her eyes. They were full of something that Thomas could only describe later, much later, as a particular kind of exhaustion. The exhaustion of a woman who has just realized that someone she trusted had been lying to her face every day for over a decade. No, she said. I did not know. She sat down hard on the sand. She put her face in her hands. She did not cry. She did not make a sound. She just sat there with her face hidden and her shoulders bowed, and Thomas Whitlock watched a queen become just for a moment a tired woman. He sat down beside her. He did not touch her. He did not say anything. He just sat there. After a long time, she lifted her head. He said one more thing, Thomas. What? He said that if I returned to him, he would spare you, and the council would accept the alliance, and the empire would be stable. And if you don't return to him, then he will kill you. He will kill me, and he will take the throne by force. Thomas looked at the fire. Okay, he said. Okay. Okay. He looked at her. He's not going to do any of those things. Thomas? He's not. He has a warship in orbit. I don't care. He has an army. I don't care. He has every advantage. He doesn't have you. She stared at him. Excuse me. He doesn't have you, Seraphine. He never had you. He spent 12 years standing beside a woman he thought he was earning. He didn't earn anything. He was a creep with patience. There's a difference between love and waiting. Margaret taught me that. Love is what you give. Waiting is what you're owed. He thought he was owed. Thomas. Real love doesn't keep score. She did not say anything. She looked at him for a long, long moment. And then she did something he was not expecting. She leaned her forehead against his shoulder just for a second. Just long enough for him to feel the weight of her and the warmth of her and the small shake of her breath that was not quite a sob. He did not move. He was afraid to move. After a moment, she straightened up. I am sorry, she said. Don't be. I was unprofessional. You were a person. Yes. That's allowed. Is it? It is here. She looked at him. The fire was getting low. She said very softly, Thomas Whitlock, I think I am going to kiss you in a moment, and I want you to know that I am giving you sufficient warning to stop me if you wish to. Thomas's mouth went very dry. Okay, he said. Okay, you wish to stop me. Okay, I'm noted. The warning. I'm noted. That is not a yes. I'm working on it. Thomas. Seraphine. I am not going to kiss you. What? I am not going to kiss you. Not tonight. Not in a cave. Not while we are both this tired and this afraid. You deserve better than that. We deserve better than that. He let out a breath he did not know he was holding. Right. But I would like very much to hold your hand again while we sleep, if that is acceptable. He looked at her, 45 years old, silver-skinned, violet-eyed, a widow, a queen, a woman who had just been told that the man she trusted most in the world had spent 12 years hiding a sickness behind a smile. A woman who, despite all of that, was looking at him like he might be the safest thing in any galaxy. Yeah, he said. Yeah, that's acceptable. She put her hand in his. They slept like that, sitting up against the wall of the cave, the fire dying down to embers, the rain on the rocks outside, and somewhere in the dark, the soft whisper of a man's voice still echoing in her memory, but a little quieter now, a little smaller, a little less. In the morning, they met the woman who would die for them. Her name was Mira. She was old, old in the way that old trees are old. Her skin was gray and ridged, and her hands shook when she walked. She was 4 feet tall. She was carrying a basket of pale roots and small purple fruit. She came around a bend in the path and almost ran into them. She did not scream. She just stopped, looked at them, set her basket down. She was a native of Aurelia, the first one Thomas had ever seen up close. The mining company had told him there were natives, but to ignore them, to stay out of their territories, to pretend they were not there. He had been pretending they were not there for 19 days. She looked tired. She looked hungry. "Hello," Thomas said, knowing she could not understand him. She tilted her head. He held up his hands. Empty. Open. He took the last protein bar out of his pack. He broke it in half. He held out one half to her. She did not take it. She watched him. He took a bite of his half, slowly, so she could see he was eating it, so she could see it was not a trick. Then he held out the other half again. She came forward, slowly, carefully. She took the food. She ate it in 2 bites, like a person who had not eaten in days. She looked at Seraphine, looked at the silver skin, looked at the violet eyes, looked at the royal armor under the borrowed coat. Seraphine knelt down, slowly, painfully. Her wound pulled. She did not let it show. She said something in a language Thomas did not recognize. Soft words, old words, the kind of words you say to a person you have wronged. Mira's eyes filled with tears. She put her small gray hand on Seraphine's silver cheek. She said something back. Then she pointed, through the trees, up the slope, towards something none of them could see yet, a path, a shortcut, toward the tower. They walked for 2 hours following the old woman. She moved faster than her shaking hand suggested. She knew the forest. She knew where the soft ground was, and where the hard, and where the snakes liked to nest. She did not say anything. She did not have to. Thomas walked behind her. Seraphine walked behind him. He thought about the protein bar. He thought about how his mother used to say that the smallest kindness can save a life. He thought also that his mother had said a lot of things that did not turn out to be true, but that maybe occasionally one of them was. They reached the edge of a wide valley. In the center of the valley, rising into the misty sky, was the tower. It was tall, taller than anything Thomas had ever seen made by hand. A needle of dark metal covered in faintly glowing symbols that pulsed slowly like a heart that had been beating for a very long time. Around the base of the tower, the ground was old stone, cracked, half swallowed by the forest, but the tower itself was untouched, whole, waiting. "There," Seraphine breathed. "That's it. That is it." "How long for the signal?" "A few minutes, once I activate it." "And how long for the fleet to come?" "That I do not know, but they will come." He nodded. He turned to thank Mira. She was not there. He turned in a slow circle. The path behind them was empty. The trees rustled. The wind blew. Where did she go? He asked. Seraphine looked grim. She went back. Back where? To where the soldiers are, to buy us time. What? Thomas. What? She was working for him. He stared at her. What? She was placed here to find me. She is one of his agents. There are old families on this planet who remember the Vishari Empire from long ago, when we did things to them I am not proud of. Some of them carry that memory. Some of them have been bought. Then why? Why did she help us? Yes, why did she help us? Seraphine looked at him. Because you fed her. He stood very still, and now she is going to lie to him, Seraphine said. She is going to tell him we went a different way. She is going to lead him off our trail. Seraphine. And he is going to find out she is lying. Seraphine. And he is going to kill her, Thomas. He felt something cold in his chest. Then we have to. There is no time. We have to. Thomas, there is no time. If we go back, we lose the tower. If we lose the tower, we lose everything. Earth, Vishari, both. He stood there, his hands at his sides, his rifle suddenly very heavy. He thought about a small gray hand on a silver cheek. He thought about half a protein bar in 2 bites. He thought about every kindness Margaret had ever shown to a stranger, and how she had been right, that they all mattered, even when no one saw. He nodded. He could not speak, so he just nodded. Seraphine took his hand. They walked together toward the tower, across the long cracked stones through the mist, while somewhere behind them, an old woman who had been bought and had chosen in the end to give herself away, walked back toward soldiers she knew would not let her live. They reached the tower door. Seraphine placed her silver hand on the dark metal. Old symbols flared blue around her palm. The door opened with a sound like a long, slow breath. She stepped inside. He followed. The control platform stood at the center of a great circular chamber. Ancient machines lined the walls, dark and asleep. She crossed the floor and placed both hands on the console. The whole tower woke up. Light flooded the chamber. Symbols danced across the floor. A low hum filled the air deep enough that Thomas could feel it in his teeth. "It is working," she whispered. "How long?" 4 minutes. Okay. He went to the door, stood watch, rifle ready. The valley was empty, for now. Then it was not. A single figure walked out of the trees, tall, armored in deep black with red lights pulsing along the edges of the suit. He carried a long energy blade at his side. He walked alone. He walked slowly. He walked like a man who had all the time in the world. He stopped in the middle of the valley. He looked up at the tower. He looked at Thomas. He smiled. It was a sad smile, a tired smile. It was the smile of a man who had spent 12 years being patient and had just decided that patience was over. Behind Thomas in the chamber, Seraphine made a small sound. He turned his head. What? Thomas. What? That is Magnus. The clock on the console flickered. 3 minutes. Magnus Thorvane began to walk toward the tower. He was not alone for long. Behind him in 2s and 3s and 10s, the soldiers came out of the trees. Thomas looked at his rifle. He looked at the door. He looked at the woman behind him, glowing in the blue light of an ancient machine, the future of 2 civilizations, hanging on whether she could stay alive for 3 more minutes. He thought about Margaret. He thought about Hannah. He thought about the yellow blanket. He thought finally, and with a strange calm clarity, that he had been 20 minutes too late once in his life, and he was not going to be 20 minutes too late again. He stepped out of the doorway. He raised the rifle. He stood between the woman and the army. And in that small moment, before anything else happened, he heard Seraphine's voice behind him, very soft, very clear. Thomas. Yeah. Whatever happens. Yeah. Thank you for the protein bar. He almost laughed. His finger tightened on the trigger. The soldiers began to run. Part 3. The first soldier reached him in 9 seconds. Thomas counted. He did not know why he counted. His brain was doing something strange. It was doing math, distances, angles, the way tall grass moves when boots come through it. 6 years of crystal mining had taught him to notice small things, pressure cracks, hairline fractures, the exact moment before a wall comes down. He fired. He missed. He fired again. He did not miss the second time. The soldier dropped. Another came. Thomas moved sideways. He had learned in the last 24 hours that he was harder to hit when he moved sideways. He did not stop to think about why. He just moved. Behind him in the tower, the console hummed. 2 minutes left on the signal. A red blade cut the air an inch from his ear. He turned, slammed the butt of his rifle into a helmet. The soldier staggered. Thomas shot him in the chest. He did not feel anything about it. He would feel things about it later. There would be time later to feel things. He hoped. Thomas. Seraphine's voice. From behind him, sharp. Busy. Behind you. He turned. Magnus Thorvane was standing 10 feet away. He was not running. He was not raising his blade. He was just standing there, watching, as if Thomas were a small piece of theater, as if all of this, the soldiers, the valley, the dying men in the grass, as if all of this were happening for his entertainment. He was older than Thomas had expected, 58, tall, lean, gray at the temples, a face that had been handsome once and was still handsome in the way ruins are handsome. The kind of face a woman might have trusted, the kind of face a king might have called friend. You are the human, Magnus said. His voice was quiet, pleasant almost. His standard was perfect. Yeah, Thomas said. You are the one who saved her. Yeah. You are the one she chose. Thomas did not answer that. Magnus tilted his head slightly, studying him, the way a man studies a horse he is thinking about buying. You are not what I expected. Sorry to disappoint. Oh no, you are not a disappointment, Mr. Whitlock. You are a curiosity. That's worse. Perhaps. Thomas's rifle was still raised. His arms were starting to ache. He had been holding it up for too long. He was 45 years old. His shoulders were not what they used to be. He kept it raised anyway. Magnus. That was Seraphine. From the doorway, she had stepped out. Of course she had stepped out. Thomas wanted to scream at her to get back inside. He did not, because some part of him understood, even in this moment, that this was a thing she had to do, a thing she had earned. 12 years of being lied to, and now the man who lied was standing in front of her, and she was a queen. And queens do not hide in towers when their betrayers come to call. She walked across the cracked stones. She stopped beside Thomas. She did not touch him, but she stood close. Magnus looked at her. The pleasant smile faltered. For the first time, Thomas saw what was underneath. The tiredness, the hunger, the thing that had been eating this man alive for 12 years. My queen, Magnus said, soft. Magnus, you are well. I am alive. Yes, that is different. Yes. A pause. Magnus, my queen. Why? A single word. It hung in the air between them. Magnus's smile was completely gone now. Why? Why? You ask me why. I ask you why. He looked at her for a long moment. Then he looked at Thomas. Then he looked back at her. I loved your husband, Magnus said. Seraphine did not move. I loved Thalion. He was my friend. He was my brother. We were boys together. We were soldiers together. He saved my life on the moons of Vexar. When we were 23 years old, I would have died for him. I almost did die for him. Many times, I know. And then he met you. Magnus. I was 30 years old. I was the captain of his guard. I was at the wedding. I stood 3 steps behind him at the altar, and when he turned to look at you, walking down the aisle, I saw his face change. I saw the boy I had grown up with become a man I had never met, because he had seen you, because you had walked into his life, and I remember thinking, I thought that is what love looks like. Magnus, I had never seen it before, not on a man's face. I had read about it in poems, I had heard about it in songs, but I had never seen it. And then there it was, on Thalion's face. Because of you, Thomas's arms were burning. He did not lower the rifle. And then he died, Magnus said. Seraphine's voice was a whisper. Yes, he died from a horse. He died from a stupid horse, on a stupid day, on a stupid trip he should not have taken alone. I had begged him not to take it alone. He laughed at me. He said, Magnus, you worry like an old woman. A small, terrible laugh. He was right. I worried like an old woman. Magnus. And then he was gone. And you were broken. You were 33 years old, and you were broken. And the council came for you. Did you know that? They came for you the night he died. They came to me. They said the queen is young. The queen is grieving. The queen is foreign to our laws. We must take the throne. We must protect the empire. And I said no. I said no to them. I stood in front of them with my sword drawn, and I said, you will not touch her. You will not touch his wife. I will kill any man in this room who tries. I never knew. No, you did not. Magnus. And I stood beside you. For 12 years, I taught you the council. I taught you the borders. I taught you the names of the loyal generals and the disloyal generals, and which one you could trust with your life, and which one you could only trust with money. I built a wall around you with my own body. And every night, my queen, every night for 12 years, I went home alone. Thomas felt something turn in his stomach. It was not pity. It was close to pity. But it was also something else, something colder, something that knew with absolute certainty that this man's love story was not a love story at all. It was a debt. It was a man who had been writing a bill for 12 years and had finally come to cash it. Seraphine knew it too. He could see her knowing it. Magnus, she said, I am sorry you were lonely. You are sorry I was lonely. Yes, that is what you say to me. After 12 years, what did you want me to say? I wanted you to see me. Magnus, I did see you. I saw a friend. I saw an advisor. I saw the man who stood beside my husband at our wedding. That is what I saw. That is who you were. And now I see a man who tried to kill me. His face changed. It did not crumple. It did not break. It just set, like cement going hard, the way some men's faces go when they have been told the truth and have decided not to hear it. You chose him, Magnus said. He did not look at Thomas. He gestured at him, the way a man gestures at a stain. This earthman, this miner, this widower with bad knees and a dead wife. Hey, Thomas said. Be quiet. Listen, pal. Thomas. That was Seraphine. Quiet. He shut up. You chose him, Magnus said again. After 12 years, after everything I have done, you chose a stranger you have known for 2 days. Yes. Why? Because he did not keep score. The valley was very quiet. The soldiers had stopped moving. They had heard somehow that something was happening here that was not their business. They stood at the edges of the field, weapons lowered, watching. The way men watch a fight they know they cannot help. Magnus closed his eyes. When he opened them, he was somewhere else. Some place inside himself. Some place where the lights had gone out. My queen, he said, soft. I am going to ask you one more time. Magnus, stand with me. No. Stand with me. Send the human away. Marry me. Rule with me. Let me give you everything I have spent 12 years saving for you. Magnus, you cannot save love. You can only give it, and you have not given me anything. You have only watched me and waited and added to a ledger I did not ask you to keep. My queen? No. Then I am sorry. He raised his blade. Thomas pulled the trigger. Nothing happened. Click. He looked down. The energy cell was dead. He had a single, perfectly clear thought, which was, this is what Margaret would call a hell of a time to be out of bullets. Magnus moved. He was fast. Faster than a man his age had any right to be. The blade came down, and Thomas threw the rifle up to block it, and the blade cut the rifle in half. Cut it like paper. Half of it spun away into the grass. Thomas dove sideways. He hit the ground hard. His shoulder crunched. He rolled and came up, and he had nothing in his hand. Nothing. Empty. Magnus was already on him. The blade swung. A hand caught the wrist. A small, silver, surprisingly strong hand. Seraphine stood there, holding Magnus's wrist. Her face was calm. Magnus. My queen let go. Magnus, I have not told you something. Let go. My father was a general. What? My father was a general. Did you know that? I knew. He had 3 sons. They all died young. He had only me. He taught me the spear when I was 9 years old. He taught me the blade when I was 12. He taught me the empty hand when I was 15. He taught me how to kill a man with a hairpin when I was 17. Did you know that? You stopped. When you married Thalion, you said queens do not fight. Yes. You have not raised a hand in 20 years, my queen. No. She twisted her wrist. Something in Magnus's wrist made a sound that men's wrists are not supposed to make. He gasped. The blade fell. She caught it. Thomas, on his knees in the grass, watched a 45-year-old queen pick up an energy blade and stand over the man who had stalked her for 12 years. Magnus was on his knees, holding his wrist, looking up at her. Seraphine raised the blade. And here is the moment. This is the moment Thomas would remember for the rest of his life. This is the moment he would tell his granddaughter about when she was old enough to hear it, because Seraphine stood there with the blade in her hand, the man who had betrayed her at her feet, 12 years of lies kneeling in the grass, the whole valley watching, the fleet beginning to descend through the clouds above them. And she could have done it. She had every right, every law, every reason in the universe. And she stopped. She did not lower the blade. Not yet. But she stopped. She looked over her shoulder at Thomas. Their eyes met, and he understood in that look that she was asking him a question. She was not asking him for permission. She was asking him to remind her of who she was. Thomas's voice came out of him before he had thought about it. Don't. She did not move. Thomas. Don't, Seraphine. He tried to kill us. I know. He has lied to me for 12 years. I know. He killed Mira, the old woman with the small gray hand, the protein bar, the shortcut through the trees. He had been trying not to think about her. He had been trying. I know, he said. Thomas, he will do it again. If we let him live, he will find a way. Maybe. Then why? Because? Because what? He stood up, slowly. His shoulder was screaming. He thought it might be dislocated. He didn't care. He walked across the grass. He stopped a few feet from her. Because, he said, I have seen enough dying for one lifetime. Thomas. I watched my wife die in a hospital bed. I have killed 3 men today. I have killed more men in the last 2 days than I ever thought I would kill in my life. I am tired, Seraphine. I am tired, and if you kill him with that blade, I will understand. I will not blame you, but I am asking you, as the man who loves you, don't. He had not planned to say that last part. It just came out, the man who loves you. He heard it after he had said it. He heard it like someone else had said it. And then he had to live with the fact that he had said it out loud in front of a kneeling general and 100 soldiers and a sky that was beginning to turn pink with the Aurelian dawn. Seraphine did not move. Magnus was staring at the ground. Slowly, slowly, Seraphine lowered the blade. She did not drop it. She just lowered it. She looked at Magnus. "Magnus Thorvane," she said. Her voice was a queen's voice now. Cold, clear, final. "You will be taken into custody. You will be tried by the council. You will face the law of the empire that you betrayed. You will not face me, because I am not your judge. I am only the woman you tried to kill, and I have decided that I will not let you take any more from me, not even my mercy." Magnus closed his eyes. A single tear slid down his face. Then another. Then he was weeping, silently, shoulders shaking, the way a man weeps when he has finally been seen for what he is, and the seeing has broken him. Seraphine handed the blade to Thomas. She walked back into the tower. Above them the sky tore open. The fleet had come. 12 warships, 100 warships. Thomas could not count them. The clouds glowed and parted, and the great silver ships of the Veshari came down through the gaps in the sky, slow and terrible and bright. Their engines lit the valley like sunrise. Their shadows fell across the cracked stones like falling night. The soldiers in the field dropped their weapons, all at once, like one man. They knew it was over. Thomas stood in the grass with a stolen blade in his hand and watched an empire's loyal fleet come down out of the sky to save its queen. He thought distantly that this was the strangest morning of his life. He also thought that his shoulder was definitely dislocated. Then his knees gave out. He sat down hard in the grass. He started to laugh. He did not know why. He laughed until tears came. He laughed until his chest hurt. He laughed until Seraphine came running back across the cracked stones, calling his name, calling Thomas. "Thomas, are you hurt? Where is the blood?" And he kept laughing because he could not stop, because he had been alone on Aurelia for 19 days, and now there were 100 warships in the sky, and a queen kneeling in the grass next to him, and he did not know what his life was anymore, but he was alive in it, and that was so much. That was so much. He laughed until she was holding him, and then he stopped laughing. Then he cried, both of them, foreheads pressed together in the wet grass, the pink sky turning gold above them. The medical wing of the royal flagship was quiet, quieter than any hospital Thomas had ever been in. The Veshari did not seem to do beeping machines. They had soft lights instead, and music that sounded like wind through leaves, and beds that adjusted themselves to your body without making a sound. Thomas hated it. He wanted beeping. He wanted the bad coffee from the vending machine on the 3rd floor. He wanted Margaret in the bed next to him, saying, "Tom, this place smells like a hospital," and him saying, "That's because it is a hospital, honey," and her saying, "Well, it shouldn't have to smell like one," and him laughing, and her laughing, and a nurse coming in and shushing them. That was a hospital. This was a museum that sometimes did surgery. His shoulder was reset. His ribs were taped. He had a plate of food next to him that looked like earth food, but tasted like nothing he could name. The pale violet jelly tasted, he thought, like the smell of lavender, which was an unsettling thing for jelly to taste like. He pushed it away. The communicator on the table chimed. He looked at it. A small green light was blinking. A call from Earth. He sat up too fast. His shoulder screamed at him. He did not care. He fumbled for the device. He could not find the answer button. He was going to miss it. He was going to miss it again. He was not going to be late this time. His hand found the button. The screen came alive. It was Hannah, his daughter, 28 years old, red hair like her mother's but darker, a tired face, a new mother's face. There was a smudge of something on her cheek, probably formula, probably spit up. Probably the 1,000 small daily disasters of a baby that he had never been there for. She had been crying. She had clearly been crying for a long time. Dad? Thomas could not breathe. Dad, are you okay? Hannah. They said, the news said, Dad, the news said you almost died. Hannah, Dad, Hannah. Both of them just saying each other's names for half a minute, like neither of them remembered any other words, like they had been saving the word Dad and the word Hannah for so long that the words came out first before any sentences could be built around them. I'm okay, he finally said. I'm okay, sweetheart. Dad, I'm okay. I am so sorry. Hannah, I am so sorry, Dad. Honey, no, no. I was so angry. And I said things. I said you weren't there. And, Dad, Mom told me. Mom told me before she died. She told me you were working. She told me you were paying for the medicine. She told me you loved her. She told me. And I forgot. I forgot, Dad. I let myself forget. And I was so angry that she was gone, and you were the only one left, and I had to be angry at someone. Hannah, I am sorry. Hannah, listen to me. I'm listening. You did not do anything wrong. Dad, You did not do anything wrong, Hannah. You were a kid. You were a kid who lost her mama. You were allowed. You are allowed. 8 years. It's okay. I missed you so much. I know. I named her after Mom. I know. Do you? Do you want to see her? Yes. She turned the camera slowly. The little face came into view. Lily Margaret Whitlock. She had a tiny tuft of red hair. She had a small frown in her sleep. She had her grandmother's mouth. Thomas had not seen that mouth in 8 years. He started to cry again. He had cried so many times in the last 48 hours. He was 45 years old, and he had cried more in 2 days than he had in 2 decades, and he did not care. She's beautiful, he said. She looks like Mom. She looks like her grandma. Dad. Yeah, baby. When are you coming home? He did not know how to answer. He looked toward the door of the medical room. Seraphine was standing there. She had been standing there for some time, he realized. Quietly, not interrupting, just there. The light from the corridor was behind her, and her silver skin was almost white in it. Their eyes met. She did not say anything. She just nodded. Once. Whatever you need to say, I am here. Thomas turned back to the screen. Honey, he said, there's something I have to tell you. What? I met somebody. A long silence. Hannah's face went through about 6 expressions. You? What? I know. Dad? I know. Where? Here, on the planet. It's a long story. Is she nice? She's a Queen Hannah. She's a what? Of an empire. Dad. I know. Dad. I know. What does that even mean? Hannah, I don't know yet. I really don't know yet. Mom would lose her mind. He laughed. He didn't mean to. It just came out. She would, wouldn't she? Dad, Mom would think this was hilarious. Yeah, baby. She would. A pause. A long pause. Then very quietly his daughter said, Mom would be happy for you. Thomas closed his eyes. He did not have to answer. He just nodded. And his daughter, who had not spoken to him for 8 years, said the words that would carry him for the rest of his life. It's okay, Dad. You can love somebody else. Mom would want you to. He sat in the soft Vishari bed for a long time after the call ended. Seraphine came in. She sat on the edge of the bed. She did not say anything for a while. She did not have to. After a long time, Thomas said, she named the baby after her mother. I heard. Margaret would have laughed. I think she would have. Margaret would have liked you. Seraphine looked at him. Are you sure? She liked everybody who was kind, and nobody who kept score. Then yes, Seraphine said softly. I think she would have liked me, and I think I would have liked her. He took her hand. He closed his eyes. He slept for 14 hours. The council chamber on Vishari Prime was the largest room Thomas had ever stood inside. The ceiling was so high he could not see it. There were galleries above galleries, all filled with lords and ladies in robes the colors of every star. The floor was a single slab of pale stone polished to a mirror. He could see his own reflection in it. His reflection looked like a man wearing borrowed clothes who had not slept enough. He was wearing borrowed clothes. He had not slept enough. The council was arguing. They had been arguing for 3 hours. Thomas had stopped following the words and started watching the faces. Old faces. Hard faces. The faces of people who had spent their whole lives in rooms like this one. He thought about how Margaret had worked at a diner in a town in Pennsylvania, and how the people who came to her diner had been farmers and truck drivers and old men who came in for the pancakes. He thought about how those old men had better faces than these. A lord in a deep red robe was speaking. He was angry. Thomas didn't need a translation to know he was angry. But there was a translator anyway, a small device on Thomas's collar, and it whispered into his ear. He is unsuitable. He is foreign. He is of a species not yet recognized as equal in the Concord. He has no royal blood. He has no title. He has no education in our laws. He has a daughter and a grandchild on a primitive planet. He is 45 years old. He has been a widower for less than a decade. He is by every measure of our tradition an embarrassment. Thomas listened. He kept his face still. He had been called worse in his life. By drunks, by bosses, by his own grief. He could take a lord in a red robe. The lord finished. He sat down. There was a murmur. Then Seraphine stood. She was wearing a simple dress, dawn-colored, no crown. She had told Thomas that morning that she would not wear the crown today. Today, she had said, was not a day to be a queen. Today was a day to be a woman. She walked to the center of the floor. She did not raise her voice. I have ruled this empire alone for 12 years, she said. The chamber went quiet. I have given you my youth. I have given you my strength. I have given you my sleep. I have given you my marriage. I have given you my mourning. I have stood in this room 1,000 times. I have heard you argue about borders and treaties and grain prices and tariffs and the colors of the new fleet's banners. I have heard you. I have given you my ear, my voice, my signature, and my time. My queen. I am not finished. The lord in the red robe sat back down. I am asking for one thing back, Seraphine said. Just this one. Let me choose the person who holds my hand at night. The empire will not fall because a queen loved a kind man. The empire will fall when you forget that kindness is the only thing worth ruling for. Silence. A long silence. Then a voice from the back of the chamber, a young voice. I agree with my mother. Every head turned. Arion stepped out of the gallery. 19 years old, just back from his academy. Tall, quiet, wearing his cadet uniform. He walked down the long aisle without hurrying. He stopped in front of the council. He did not look at them. He looked at Thomas. Thomas's mouth went very dry, because here was the thing. Arion was the heir. Arion was the prince. Arion had every right by Vishari law to refuse this marriage. And if he refused, the council would refuse with him, and that would be that. Thomas had not slept the night before. He had lain awake thinking about this. He had told Seraphine near dawn that he would understand. If the boy said no, he would understand. She had taken his face in her hands and said, "My husband does not have to be understood. My husband only has to be loved. We will figure out the rest." Now Arion stood in front of him. The boy was as tall as Thomas. He had his mother's eyes. He had his father's chin, Thomas had been told. He looked at Thomas for a long moment. He did not kneel. He did not make a speech. He just said, "My mother smiled yesterday while she was telling me about you. She has not smiled like that in 12 years. Thomas could not speak. "You saved her," Arion said. "I tried. That is enough for me." He put out his hand. Thomas took it. The boy's grip was firm, not warm, not cold, just firm. The grip of a young man who had decided sometime in the last few minutes that he was going to give a stranger the benefit of the doubt. "Welcome to the family," Arion said. He turned to the council. He said one word, "Approved." He walked back to his seat. The chamber was very quiet. Thomas heard a small sound beside him. He looked. Seraphine was crying, silently, with dignity, the way queens cry when they are not allowed to cry. She did not wipe her face. She did not move. Thomas reached over. He took her hand. He held it. The Lord in the red robe stood up. He did not look happy, but he bowed, stiffly, coldly. He bowed. The wedding was in spring. That is in what passed for spring on Vishari Prime, which was a season of pale gold light and small bright birds and something that smelled like cinnamon in the air, even though there was no cinnamon on Vishari Prime. Thomas had asked several times. The Vishari had been polite about it. It was held in the grand hall of the palace. There were 300 people in the room. Lords, ladies, generals, ambassadors from a dozen worlds Thomas had never heard of. There was a chair near the front on the family side where Hannah sat with little Lily on her lap. His brother had flown out too. He was crying. He had been crying for 2 days. He had a cousin's face and a heart bigger than his common sense. And when he saw Seraphine in person for the first time, he had said very quietly, "Tom, she's Silver. She's actually silver, Tom. Thomas had laughed. He had laughed a lot in the last weeks. It had stopped being strange. It had started being a habit. The light coming through the high windows was a soft Vishari gold. Music played soft and old from instruments Thomas had not yet learned the names of. Seraphine walked down the aisle. She wore a dress the color of dawn. Her hair was loose. She had a small silver circlet on her head, but only because the priest had insisted. And she had laughed about it that morning. And Thomas had laughed too. And they had laughed about it the way old couples laugh, even though they were not old, and had not been a couple long. She stopped in front of him. She took his hand. His left hand still wore the wedding ring he had bought Margaret when he was 70. He had told Seraphine weeks ago that he could not take it off. She had said, "Of course you cannot, my love. Why would you?" She slid the new ring onto his right hand. He slid the matching ring onto hers. She leaned up and whispered into his ear before the priest had finished speaking, "Thank you for the protein bar." He laughed. He laughed in the middle of his own wedding. The priest looked at him. He did not stop laughing. The reception spilled out onto the great terraces of the palace as the sun went down. Thomas held his granddaughter for the first time that night. Hannah handed her over carefully. Lily was 8 months old. She had a tuft of red hair. She had her grandmother's mouth. She looked up at Thomas with the calm, suspicious eyes of a baby, trying to decide whether a stranger was a threat. Thomas held her against his chest. She fussed. She wriggled. Then she stopped. She put her small hand on his beard. She pulled it hard. Thomas yelped. Hannah laughed. "She does that," Hannah said. "Sorry." "That's okay." "Dad?" "Yeah, baby. I'm glad you're happy. I'm glad you came. Mom would have loved this party. Mom would have danced. Mom would have been embarrassing. Mom was always embarrassing. That was her best quality. Yeah, it was." A long pause. Then Hannah said, "I'm going to be okay, Dad. We're going to be okay. Lily and me. I know, baby. Are you?" He thought about it. He looked across the terrace. Seraphine was standing with Arion, both of them laughing at something. The Aurelian blue light of the city was rising behind them. His brother was talking to a Vishari general. The general looked confused. His brother always confused generals. He thought about Margaret, not the sick Margaret, not the dying Margaret, not the funeral Margaret, the other Margaret, the one with red hair, the one with freckles, the one with a laugh that was loud in restaurants. He could feel her very faintly somewhere behind his shoulder, the way you can feel a person without seeing them. He thought she was smiling. "Yeah, baby," he said. "I'm going to be okay." 6 months later, on a balcony in the palace, Thomas held a small red-haired baby in his arms. Hannah stood beside him. She had brought Lily across the stars to visit again. She had taken 6 months between visits, which was, Thomas had decided, the right amount of time. Long enough that Lily had gotten bigger, short enough that he could still recognize her. Seraphine stood on Thomas's other side, watching, her violet eyes soft. Aurelia hung in the sky. In the distance, a small green dot. Vishari Prime stretched below them in a sea of golden towers. 2 civilizations. 1 small family. Thomas looked down at the baby in his arms. He thought about the night 19 days had become a lifetime. He thought about Margaret. He thought about the apple tree behind their old house. He thought about the smoke detector that had been her sous chef. He thought about her laugh that had been embarrassing in restaurants. He thought about her hands, freckled and warm, in a hospital bed. He thought for the first time in 8 years that she was not gone. She had just gone ahead, and one day when he went to, she would meet him at the door, and she would look at the woman he had loved, and she would smile that loud, embarrassing smile of hers, and she would say, "Well, Tom, took you long enough. Come on in, baby. Come on in." Lily made a small sound in his arms, a happy sound. Thomas Whitlock kissed his granddaughter on the top of her head. Beside him, his queen took his hand. The wind off the towers was warm. He looked out across the city. The towers, the pale gold sky, the small green dot of Aurelia, the galaxy beyond it. He was 45 years old, a widower, a miner, a father, a grandfather, a husband again, somehow against every odd that any universe had ever stacked. And he thought very quietly of something Margaret had said to him once a long time ago in a kitchen in Pennsylvania with a smoke detector going off in the background. She had said, "Tom, the worst thing that ever happens to you is not the end of the story. It is just where the story turns." He had not understood it then. He understood it now. The first chapter, he thought, had finally ended. The next one had begun. And somewhere, very faintly, on a wind that was not from this world, he thought he could hear his wife laughing. Loud, embarrassing, beautiful. He smiled. He held his granddaughter closer. He held his queen's hand tighter, and the long, gentle dusk of Vishari Prime fell softly on a family that should not have existed, on a love that should not have been possible, on a man who had been 20 minutes too late once and had spent the rest of his life being just in time.